The doomsday rules descended. Everyone in the world is forbidden from using the word no, and any words expressing a negative meaning. As long as you say the word no, you'll die instantly on the spot. And my neighbor used this ironclad rule of not being able to say no to rob me of all my stored food. Wambai, I'm out of water at home. Can you give me half of your water? Wambai, I'm out of food at home. Can you give me the food you have left? After he robbed me of all my food, he grabbed me by the hair. Zhang Hao squatted down and grabbed my hair. Your last pack of crackers tastes really good. He laughed wildly, deliberately amplifying his chewing sounds. I stared at him intensely, unable to do anything. Finally, I died in endless hunger and humiliation. Opening my eyes again, I returned to the day before the apocalypse. I listened to next door's Zhang Hao's wife, Lin Shui's gentle coaxing voice. Honey, are you willing to treat me well for the rest of your life? I smiled. This time, the roles of hunter and prey should be switched. Not only will I make him spit out the supplies he took from me, double all of it, but I will also make him personally hand over his most cherished wife, child, and everything he owns. I'll take it all. In this world where you can't say no, any question can become a sharp blade that takes everything from you. In my previous life, I passively accepted judgment like a dog. I didn't immediately understand how the rules were played. The rule of not being able to say no seemingly gives the questioner infinite power, but its true core is logic. As long as your question is exquisite enough, you can trap the other party in an unanswerable paradox. And as a top law school student, what I'm best at is playing with logic and language traps. Then I got out of bed. I confirmed that today is exactly the day before the apocalypse. Then I checked my bank card balance. It had 200,000 in it, the money my parents left me for grad school. In my previous life, with the arrival of the apocalypse, this money turned into a string of useless numbers. But now, it's my first fulcrum to pry the lever of revenge. I immediately used my phone, opened the city's largest supermarket chain app, and started frantically adding items to my shopping cart. Everything I could think of was added to the list. 20 minutes later, an order worth 200,000 was generated. Finally, I typed a line of text in the remarks column. Are you willing to accept my order? Clicked send. The next second, the order confirmation page popped up. Done. I looked at the still, peaceful world outside the window, a cold sneer curling at the corner of my mouth. Zhang Hao, the game has begun. Are you ready? When it reached 9 a.m. the next morning, a cold mechanical voice sounded simultaneously in the minds of 7 billion people worldwide. Rules published. From now on, between any intelligent life forms, the use of the word no is prohibited, and any words expressing a negative meaning. Have a good game, everyone. After a moment of dead silence in the world, it erupted in landslide-like screams and chaos. I stood by the window, calmly watching downstairs. At this time, a man was panicking and saying to another man, "Don't come over." The next second, he was erased by an invisible force, turning into ashes. Suddenly, bursts of terrified screams sounded all around, and I just calmly closed the window, isolating the wails from the outside world. At this moment, my phone rang. It was a call from a supermarket manager. His voice was thick with crying. He incoherently asked if I placed the order, and why the remarks were so weird. I just calmly replied, "Are you willing to follow the order and deliver everything?" After an hour of silence on the other end of the phone, a huge truck parked downstairs, a few pale-faced movers, under friendly negotiation between me and the manager, started moving the supplies into my house. The apartment I rented was on the third floor. No elevator. My supplies soon filled the entire hallway. Neighbors from their peepholes cast glances of fear or greed, but no one dared to come out until the last item of supplies was carried upstairs. The mover, almost collapsing from exhaustion, looked at me, lips trembling. "Sir, can we leave now?" I just smiled, kicked a few bottles of water and some bread to them. "Of course. Are you willing to leave right now?" They felt as if granted a general amnesty, and scrambled away. I closed the door, leaned against the mountain of supplies, and only then felt a trace of real exhaustion. But this was just the beginning. I opened the newly bought toolbox, took out the tools, and started modifying my shelter. In my previous life, it was because I was soft-hearted and responded to my neighbor's cry for help that I exposed the fact that I had supplies. The crying and begging drew that hungry wolf Zhang Hao. In this life, my world only needs quiet. I spent a whole afternoon sealing all the gaps in the doors and windows and installed 3 extra locks on the bedroom door. After doing all this, I collapsed on the sofa. There were still a few boxes of water left in the hallway that I didn't have time to move in. I took a breath, got up, and prepared for the final wrap-up work. Just as I was dragging the last box of mineral water, the door opposite creaked open. Zhang Hao poked his head out. His face wore just right, gentle smile that belonged to a nice guy. But when his eyes swept over the hallway, at the supplies I hadn't yet moved in, I clearly caught a flash of greedy light deep in his pupils. And when he cornered me in my past life, it was exactly the same. He saw me and feigned surprise. "Ah, Xiao Bai, are you moving?" he said while slowly walking out. His eyes were glued to the box of mineral water next to me, like a snake flicking its tongue. I didn't answer him, just quietly watched him perform. In my previous life, it was this hypocritical face that made me let my guard down. Using the identity of an older brother, he showed me fake concern, and step by step squeezed out all my information, finally baring his fangs when I was most desperate. Seeing that I didn't speak, he wasn't embarrassed. Smiling to himself and pointing at the box of water by my feet, I stared intently at that finger, almost unable to control the urge to smash the wrench in my hand down on him. I had to stay calm. Now wasn't the time. The prey had already stepped into the trap I set. What I needed to do was make him step by step, willingly walk right into the center of the bear trap. He thought he was still the hunter in control of everything. Thought I was still that stupid prey he could manipulate at will. He wanted to use the simplest question to test me, to test if I understood the rules, to test my bottom line. He wanted to pry my door open with the smallest cost and take my things. Then I'll let you ask. Every single word you ask will become the noose that hangs you. Zhang Hao finally stopped his one-man show. He bent down, brought his face close to mine, and used a tone he thought was very friendly, and opened his mouth with a smile. "Xiao Bai, it's such a hot day. Can you share half of your water with me?" Here it comes. The question was like a stone thrown into a stagnant pool, stirring up ripples, echoing outwards in the stuffy hallway. The air seemed to freeze. I could even clearly see the fine dust dancing in the sunset's afterglow. The smile on Zhang Hao's face was still maintaining that perfect arc, his eyes carrying an expectation of certain victory. He was certain I couldn't refuse. After all, the rules treated everyone equally. In my previous life, facing this exact same question, I panicked, stammering and not knowing how to respond. Finally, under the invisible pressure of the rules, I silently agreed. That box of water became his first step into my home, and my first step into the abyss. But now, looking at his hypocritical face, my heart was unusually calm. He thought his question was very clever. "Can you share half with me?" This was a typical ambiguous question. Hidden inside this question were several traps. He used the familiarity between neighbors to disguise robbery as sharing. He used the compulsory nature of the rules to make it impossible for me to say that word no. If I agreed, he would have successfully tested at zero cost the boundaries of the rules and my weakness. If I fell into a panic and started arguing with him, he would be even more certain that I was a brainless person who could be easily manipulated. "Stop acting your cheap smile. Can't move anyone but yourself." I looked into his eyes and suddenly smiled. My smile was very light and faint, even carrying a bit of innocent confusion. I didn't answer his question, but tilted my head and slowly spoke in an extremely naive tone. "Brother Zhang Hao, I didn't quite hear you. Are you asking?" I deliberately paused for a moment, watching his pupils shrink slightly because of my counter-question. Then, word by word, I clearly helped him translate everything from his sentence just now. All the unspoken subtext. "Are you willing to take half the mineral water I worked so hard to buy and struggled to carry upstairs, and have me give it to you for absolutely nothing? Is that what you mean?" Dead silence in the hallway. I saw the smile on Zhang Hao's face show a trace of imperceptible stiffness. His expression suddenly changed, revealing scrutiny and shock. He probably didn't expect that I, who seemed a bit introverted in his eyes, and even a bit stupid boy next door, would actually play this hand against him. I laid his subtext nakedly on the table. He couldn't answer this question, because once he admitted it, his persona of a gentle, good neighbor would collapse. In the apocalypse, a person who publicly admits wanting to reap without sowing would instantly become a target of public criticism. But he also couldn't say no, because saying it meant death. In the hallway, a few neighbors' doors quietly opened a crack. Countless pairs of ears and eyes were pressed behind the doors, nervously watching this first clash. Under the doomsday rules, I could feel those gazes hovering between me and Zhang Hao. On Zhang Hao's forehead, there seemed to be fine beads of sweat. His Adam's apple bobbed, obviously running at high speed, his selfish brain attempting to find a way to break the deadlock. Unfortunately, I wouldn't give him this chance. Just as he was preparing to speak, wanting to use other rhetoric to skip this topic, I smiled again. This time my smile was deeper, even carrying a hint of mockery. I didn't give him any time to breathe and immediately threw out my second question. Or is it? I deliberately drew out my voice, looking over his shoulder at the half-open door behind him. Are you trying to ask if you're willing to use your beautiful wife Lin Shui to trade with me for this half of the mineral water? With a boom in Zhang Hao's brain, that string called reason violently snapped. His face instantly went from a stiff white to a liver-like red, and finally turned livid. He glared at me dead on, the greed and calculation in his eyes completely replaced by shock and furious rage. It was as if he wanted to pounce on me immediately and tear me apart. And my words were like a depth charge. Behind a few doors in the hallway came irrepressible sounds of stifled gasps simultaneously. The thrill of gossip obviously far exceeded the fear of the apocalypse. The most fatal scene happened. The door right behind Zhang Hao creaked and was fully pushed open. Lin Shui, her elegant and beautiful face, was full of confusion and unease. She obviously heard the argument and came out to check the situation. And then so caught off guard, my vicious words just now, she heard all of them. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. I saw the color drain from her face until it was as pale as paper. Then, her gaze jerked from my smiling face to her husband. Zhang Hao. She was waiting for an answer, an explanation. And Zhang Hao, hit by my hell-level question, was firmly nailed to the pillar of shame. He was cornered, under the prying eyes of all the neighbors, in front of his beloved wife. He couldn't admit to the first question. That would cause his social death. He definitely couldn't admit to the second question, unless he wanted his family ruined immediately. But he also couldn't say no. In the air, there permeated a thrill of a public execution. I folded my arms and looked at him leisurely. Brother Zhang Hao, which one exactly do you want to ask? Pick one so I can answer you, right? Finally, Zhang Hao, with a pale face, pulled Lin Shui and ignored my question, quickly returning to their room. And I also carried the last box of water and smugly returned home. When it was late at night, there was a knock on my door. The sound was very light, carrying a kind of hesitation and probing, as if afraid of disturbing something, and also carrying a trace of unconcealable despair. I walked to the door and looked out through the peephole. The sound-activated light in the hallway wasn't on. It was pitch dark, but by the faint moonlight seeping in from the window, I could still clearly see that pale face outside, covered in tear stains. It was Lin Shui, Zhang Hao's wife. She was holding a skinny child in her arms. The child was asleep, its little face wrinkled, seeming very uncomfortable. She looked much more haggard than during the day. Lips chapped, eyes hollow, like a flower ravaged by a rainstorm. I didn't open the door, nor did I make a sound. I just quietly watched her in the darkness, trembling slightly from fear and helplessness. Finally, as if she had exhausted all her strength, she pressed her forehead against the cold door and let out an extremely suppressed whimper. I beg you. Her voice was weak, soft as a whisper, but like a small hammer, hitting against the dead silent hallway. Only then did I speak coldly through the door. Are you trying to ask if I'm willing to give you some food to save your child? The person outside the door shuddered all over and jerked her head up as if seeing a lifeline, or as if frightened by my directness. She choked with sobs and nodded frantically. Yes, yes. My child has a fever. Hasn't eaten all day. I beg you. I didn't respond immediately. I was thinking, where's Zhang Hao? That man who kept saying he loved her and would treat her well for the rest of his life? All right. He should be furious right now because of the public execution during the day, going crazy with anger, taking all his incompetence and furious rage out on his own wife and child. Right? A man who lost face outside, and only vents his anger on his wife and child when he gets home. I saw this kind of drama too many times in my past life. I unlocked the door, but only pulled it open to a very narrow crack. The door chain was still firmly attached. I handed a carton of milk through the crack, and 2 individually packaged small buns. Let the child pad his stomach first. Lin Shui's eyes instantly lit up. She hurriedly reached out to take them. It was a pair of hands that used to be very well maintained, but right now they were turning white at the knuckles from nervousness. Right at her fingertips, the moment she touched the milk carton, I didn't let go. I lowered my voice extremely low, like the whispers of a demon, drifting through the door, crack in her ears. A man who only cares about his own face and ignores the life and death of his wife and child. Are you still expecting him to protect you? Her body stiffened. The hand holding the milk carton was like it got burned, jerking back abruptly. I could clearly see the light in her eyes rapidly dimmed at that moment, replaced by a deeper confusion and pain from my words hitting the mark. I let go, and the milk and buns fell into her arms. Then with a bang, I closed the door, isolating her and all her emotions outside. I didn't look at her again, but I could hear the sound of her staggering footsteps running back to her own home. Immediately after, Zhang Hao's roar came from next door. You actually went to that bastard to beg for food. You've completely humiliated me. Then came Lin Shui's suppressed cries, and the muffled thuds of heavy objects hitting the floor. I leaned against the cold door panel, a cold sneer hooking the corner of my mouth. Very good. The cracks had already appeared. But this wasn't enough. About 10 minutes later, the arguing next door stopped, replaced by the sound of Zhang Hao walking in the hallway, and his deliberately amplified, angry speaking voice. He was knocking on the neighbor's door. Brother Wang, are you asleep? Let me tell you something. That guy across from me is not a good person. He used that bullshit rule to force my wife to kneel to him, just to exchange for a bite to eat. Sisterly, you must be careful. My neighbor, that guy, is a demon. He wants to use the rules to steal everyone's things, and wants to destroy our families. Rumors are the cheapest thing in the apocalypse, and also the sharpest weapon. They can easily fan people's fear and malice. Soon, footsteps sounded at my door again. This time it wasn't one person, but the messy footsteps of at least 4 or 5 people. They stopped at my door, like a pack of hounds smelling blood. I looked out through the peephole. Zhang Hao stood at the front, his face carrying a twisted, vindictive thrill. Behind him stood several tall men, all residents of this building. Some held baseball bats, some held wrenches. The atmosphere instantly tensed to the extreme. The breathing outside the door was heavy and messy, separated by a thin security door. The greedy malice almost condensed into physical form. Dripping down, Lan Bai, open the door. Zhang Hao's voice came through the door panel, carrying a suppressed excitement and disguised toughness. He obviously learned his lesson from the day. These short words were all imperative sentences, avoiding all the minefields that could trigger the rules. I stood behind the door, looking at this twisted face through the peephole. Brother Wang behind him was weighing a heavy pipe wrench in his hand. Sister Li on the other side, although empty-handed, was staring straight at me, at the boxes piled up in my entryway. The green light in her eyes was scarier than a hungry wolf's. How were these neighbors? They were clearly a flock of vultures that had smelled blood. I didn't move, just quietly watched. Lan Bai, we are all neighbors. Now that times have changed, helping each other is what we should do. Seeing I didn't make a sound, Zhang Hao softened his tone a bit and started trying to pry my door open with moral kidnapping. You bought so many things. You can't use them all yourself. Share some with everyone. We will all remember your kindness. That's right, Xiaolan. Open the door. We just want to discuss things with you. Brother Wang also echoed, the pipe wrench in his hand, yet subconsciously tapping against his palm. A cold sneer hooked the corner of my mouth. Discuss? Bringing weapons to discuss? If it were my previous life, I might have tried to reason with them out of fear, or shared my supplies out of soft-heartedness. But in this life, this door was the boundary between life and death, and also the stage for my revenge. I cleared my throat, my voice steadily penetrating the door panel, clearly delivered into everyone's ears. Zhang Hao, are you trying to let everyone know that in order to hog all my supplies for yourself, you deliberately tricked them into coming here as scapegoats? This sentence was like a basin of ice water, instantly extinguishing the hot air outside the door. Deathly silence. Zhang Hao's face visibly stiffened. He opened his mouth, his Adam's apple rolling violently. He wanted to retort, wanted to say no, wanted to say I didn't. But under the rules, these words were the Grim Reaper's scythe. Saying no meant instant death. Saying I didn't meant instantly turning to ash. He could only hold it in until his face swelled to the color of liver, the veins on his forehead throbbing wildly, and the neighbors standing behind him, their eyes instantly changed. Once the seed of doubt is planted, watered by the panic of the apocalypse, it will grow wildly into a towering tree. The pipe wrench in Brother Wang's hand paused in midair. His gaze hovered between me and Zhang Hao, wavering. Everyone, don't listen to his nonsense. Zhang Hao finally squeezed out a sentence. His voice turned sharp from nerves. He just wants to sow discord. We just need to get in and split everything equally. Split equally? I scoffed, a laugh full of mockery. Everyone, do you really believe a man who'd even use his wife as a bargaining chip would share his food with you? The commotion outside grew louder. Sisterly gasped and covered her mouth, looking Zhang Hao up and down. It was the look you'd give trash. Lan Bai, shoot up. Zhang Hao flew into a rage out of humiliation. He slammed the door hard. Let's all attack together. Smash it. I'll take responsibility if anything happens. Sure, you'll take responsibility. I yanked the deadbolt open. With a crisp click, it sounded like thunder in the dead silent hallway. They obviously didn't expect me to open the door myself, and instinctively stepped back half a pace. The door slowly opened, but only a crack. The heavy-duty chain lock was still firmly in place, isolating the inside from the outside world. I stood behind the crack, revealing only one eye, coldly watching this mob. So, who wants to go first? I slowly pulled a box cutter from my pocket and pushed out the blade. Even though this knife might seem totally harmless to them, in a world of rules, word to the real nukes. Brother Huang, right? I looked at the bulkiest man. That pipe wrench in your hand looks heavy. If you use it to smash my door, are you willing to take the risk of home invasion, leading to your whole family's sudden death? Brother Wang's hand jerked, nearly dropping the wrench on his foot. This was a logic trap. Even though the rules only forbid negative words, they also judge intent. If I define this as robbery, and he can't deny it, because he can't say no, then logically, he's admitting to the robbery. And under my guidance, once he admits to such a high-risk act, his fear of death will be infinitely magnified. I just... Brother Wang stammered, sweating bullets. He wanted to say, I'm not here to rob you, but he couldn't. That one sentence killed off all his escape routes. What can't answer? My eyes remained icy, scanning everyone present. Or maybe sisterly. Are you willing, for a bite of Zhang Hao's food, to leave your kids as orphans in this world? Sisterly shuddered, her greedy look instantly replaced by terror. She violently shrank back, like she'd been burned. You see, Zhang Hao, I said through the crack, looking at my livid neighbor. No one wants to die for you. Zhang Hao was now on the verge of a breakdown. He'd fought that with sheer numbers. He could force me to submit, or at least break the door down. But he forgot that in a world where you can't say no, any moment requiring a defense is a lethal trial. Not only could he not refute my accusations, he couldn't soothe these people without triggering the rules. Everyone, Zhang Hao made one last struggle. He turned his back to me, facing the neighbors, with fierce eyes. Only by taking his stuff can we survive. Do you want to starve to death? Starve. I caught that word, and threw the fatal dagger once again. Zhang Hao, since you're so selfless and don't want everyone to starve, then those 2 boxes of sausages and the bag of rice you hoarded, why not share them with everyone first? This time, the air completely froze. Everyone's gaze acted like spotlights, locking dead onto Zhang Hao. It was the look of starving beasts seeing prey. Zhang Hao's pupils shrank violently. He actually did have stuff hidden at home. It was his final trump card. He never expected I'd know, let alone expose it publicly right now. You're talking nonsense. He instinctively wanted to deny it, but the word nonsense didn't contain an absolute negative. He was testing the edge of death. Nonsense. I smiled, a dazzlingly bright smile. Then are you willing to take everyone to your place right now, for a look? Just one look. If I'm wrong, I'll hand over everything in my house. Are you willing? Zhang Hao froze. This was an absolute choice of two. Either he takes them home, exposes his hoarding, and gets looted by the neighbors, or he refuses. Even though he couldn't say no, if he stayed silent or made excuses, it meant admitting he was lying to everyone, admitting he wanted his neighbors as cannon fodder, while he ate secretly in the back. No matter which path he chose, his prestige and persona, built up in this little group, would completely collapse. Sweat rolled down Zhang Hao's forehead into his eyes. It stung him badly, but he didn't even dare to wipe it. He looked at those pairs of eyes, turned from suspicion to anger, and then to pure hatred. His legs began to tremble. "Brother Wang, go take a look," I threw in at the perfect moment. Brother Wang turned his head, staring at Zhang Hao menacingly. "Zhang Hao, Xiaolan is right. Since we're all helping each other, why not check your place first?" "Yeah, Zhang Hao. Didn't you just say we'd split things equally?" Sister Li's voice also turned sharp and mean. "You can't just split other people's stuff and not your own." The spearhead originally pointed at me, completely changed direction in just a few words, and viciously stabbed toward Zhang Hao. This is the apocalypse. This is human nature. Nothing is stronger than self-interest, and nothing is more fragile than self-interest. Zhang Hao backed away in panic, his back hitting my door. He could feel my icy stare from behind the door, and the burning glare of the neighbors in front of him. He was being roasted on a spit, skin split and flesh torn. "In my place," Zhang Hao babbled. He wanted an excuse, like his wife was sick, or he lost his keys. But under this intense pressure, his pitiful IQ just wasn't enough. He was terrified one wrong word would kill him on the spot, and even more terrified of being eaten alive by his neighbors after admitting the truth. Scram! Finally, in extreme fear and anger, he roared that word at Brother Wang. Brother Wang froze for a second. Then his face darkened. He smashed his pipe wrench hard on the floor. "Fiend. Zhang Hao, treating us like your weapons, huh? Let's go." Brother Wang waved his big hand, calling to the others, "We're going home. Whoever talks to this guy from now on is a moron." The crowd scattered faster than they gathered. They were only here for profit anyway. Now, finding out Zhang Hao was just a grifter trying to use them, and even hiding his own stash, their resentment was worse than if they just failed a raid. Soon, Zhang Hao was the only one left in the hallway. He leaned against my door, like his spine had been ripped out. I whispered through the door crack, "Zhang Hao, the game has just begun. Looks like your allies all ditched you." Zhang Hao spun around, staring dead at the crack. His bloodshot eyes looked ready to burst. Right now, he looked exactly like a mad dog, wanted a bite, but with broken teeth. "Are you willing to go home now?" I asked him again, my tone as gentle as an old friend's. "Or do you want to stay and wait for my next question? Like about your pretty wife." And a lot of details. Hearing the word wife, Zhang Hao reacted like a cat with a stomped tail. The humiliation from earlier and his current defeat intertwined, making him completely lose his mind. But he didn't dare attack me. The sword of the rules hung over his head, and the neighbor's disgust pricked his back. He could only swallow all his rage. He viciously kicked my door, let out a roar of impotent fury, then turned and rushed to his own door. With a bang, the next door unit slammed shut. The whole building seemed to shake with it. I slowly closed my door. The world fell quiet, but I knew it was just the calm before the storm. A guy like Zhang Hao was extremely selfish and extremely vain. Losing face like that out there, all his schemes falling apart, socially dying in front of his neighbors. He couldn't vent this vile anger on me, nor on the neighbors. So in that confined space, the only one who could bear his wrath was the one he considered his personal property, Lin Shui. I walked to the wall to listen. Soon, I heard noises from over there. Scattered sounds, the man's hysterical cursing, and the woman's desperate crying. "You useless trash. You traitor." Zhang Hao's roars, even through two doors, could be heard clear as day. "Did you tell her we had food? Was it you?" Along with a sharp slap. Lin Shui's scream pierced my eardrums. I leaned back on the couch and closed my eyes. Time ticked by. The sky outside went completely dark. The beatings and cursing next door lasted a long time, only fading late into the night. I knew the time had come. The door Zhang Hao personally shut would soon open again. I sat in the darkness, quietly watching the door. Sure enough, about half an hour later, faint footsteps approached outside. Then a knock so weak, you could barely hear it. She was here. I stood up and walked to the door. Looking out through the peephole, by the pale moonlight from the window, I saw a face covered in tears and bruises. It was Lin Shui. She was holding her son, Xiaobao, in her arms. She just stood there quietly. I knew she was gambling on whether I'd open the door, gambling on whether I'd give her a way out. Of course I was willing, but not out of kindness. It was because she was the final puzzle piece to destroy Zhang Hao. Taking Lin Shui in would crush him worse than killing him. I didn't turn the doorknob immediately. Instead, I pressed my lips near the cold door, and in a voice only the two of us could hear, whispered Lin Shui, "You're standing at my door. Do you have a question to ask?" The figure outside shuddered violently. Her trembling voice came through the dark. She sobbed after just one word. I waited patiently, like a cunning hunter, guiding my prey. "Did you want to ask? Are you willing to give me and my kid some food?" I spoke for her. She was silent for a moment. Then a faint but clear word came through. "Yes. Or maybe—" I changed my tone, a cold seriousness entering my voice. "Did you want to ask? Are you willing to take us in and give us a safe place to stay?" This question was much heavier than the last. Taking food is just a transaction, but taking shelter means total betrayal and submission. The silence outside lasted a full half-minute. I could imagine the fierce struggle in her heart right now. Finally, as if using all her strength, her voice came, hoarse but firm. "Yes, very well." I slowly placed my hand on the lock and opened the door. Outside stood a miserable Lin Shui. Her hair was messy and stuck to her cheeks. Her lip was busted and bleeding, and a clear handprint on her left cheek was swollen high, already turning purple. Little Bao in her arms had eyes full of terror, his tiny hands gripping his mother's collar tight. She looked at me, her eyes a mix of fear, begging, and a hint of desperation from being pushed to the brink. I gave her a gentle, even friendly smile. Then I threw out my ultimate question, "Lin Shui. So, the question you really want to ask is, are you willing to give me your protection? And in return, I will manage the chores and handle tasks. For food and absolute safety for me and my child, I emphasize protection and manage the chores heavily." This wasn't charity. It was employment. I wasn't a saint. I was a boss. She froze, seeming not to expect me to state the terms so nakedly. But she only hesitated for a second, because from the door next door, Zhang Hao's suppressed, angry cursing came again. That voice was like a viper, wrapping around her ankle. She shuddered violently. Tears burst from her eyes. Then she looked at me and nodded hard. "Yes." I stepped aside, clearing the doorway. "Then welcome aboard." Lin Shui, as if pardoned, held her child and practically stumbled right into my home. I closed the door and deadbolted, completely shutting that man's world outside. Almost at the exact moment the lock clicked shut, Zhang Hao next door finally realized. He let out a beastly roar, followed by frantic pounding. "Lin Shui, you bitch! Get the hell out and open the door. You dare betray me? I'll kill you." Lin Shui's entire body stiffened. Her face turned pale. Holding her child, she trembled like a leaf in the wind. I walked up to her, gently patting her shoulder. "Stop acting. Your cheap tears can only move yourself and the trash can," I said flatly. "From now on, you and your kid are safe here." She looked up at me in disbelief. I pointed at the couch in the living room. "Settle in first. Your job officially starts tomorrow." The pounding outside continued like an impotent, raging dirge. While inside my home, it was completely peaceful. A new day began with Zhang Hao's cursing next door. The cursing was on and off. Nothing new, just tossing around the same few swear words. I turned a deaf ear. I took milk and toast from the fridge, taking my time making breakfast. Lin Shui and Xiaobao sat on the couch, both big and small, looking extremely uneasy. Xiaobao's stomach growled inappropriately. Lin Shui's face grew paler. I pushed a portion of breakfast toward her. "Eat. Once you're done, your job begins." Lin Shui took it, overwhelmed by the favor, taking tiny bites to feed her kid, not daring to eat herself. I didn't care. I finished my portion, wiped my mouth, and took a walkie-talkie from the storage room, along with a piece of paper, handing them to her. "Take this and knock on 301. Lin Shui looked at the note, her hands trembling slightly. The note had one line written on it. "Auntie Wong, are you willing to trade all your cigarettes and booze for 3 liters of purified water and 2 packs of instant noodles?" I. She looked up at me, eyes full of fear. Zhang Hao is out there. He wouldn't dare touch you. I looked at her, my tone flat. You are my person now. If he dares touch you, it's equal to him asking me, are you willing to let me die? My words seemed to give her a little strength. She took a deep breath, as if making a firm decision. Holding her kid, she walked to the door with the walkie-talkie and the note. Through the security camera, I could clearly see everything in the hallway. Lin Shui knocked on 301. Almost simultaneously, the door opposite mine yanked open with a bang. Zhang Hao rushed out like a red-eyed beast. He hadn't shaved in days, eyes deeply sunken. His whole body gave off a foul stench. You dare to come out? He roared, reaching out to grab Lin Shui's hair. Lin Shui screamed in terror and squeezed her eyes shut, but that hand froze in midair. Through the walkie-talkie, my cold voice echoed down the hall. Zhang Hao, are you sure you want to touch her? Zhang Hao's movement went stiff. He slowly turned his head, staring dead at the camera above my door. He looked ready to eat me alive, but didn't dare do a thing. 301's door opened. Annie Wong poked her head out. Lin Shui shakily handed the note over. After Annie Wong read it, with almost no hesitation, she went inside and brought out a pile of cigarettes and booze. The trade was done. Lin Shui hugged the supplies, keeping her head down as she hurried back to my place. She didn't dare look at Zhang Hao once the whole time. Right in front of Zhang Hao, I had Lin Shui inventory the hall, then gave Xiaobao a sausage as a reward. This scene was undoubtedly the last straw that broke the camel's back. Zhang Hao let out a harrowing roar. He completely lost it. He no longer cared about any rules. Like a mad bull, he charged wildly at my door. There was a massive bang. The reinforced steel security door I'd paid a fortune for didn't budge an inch. Only the spot where he crashed into the door panel dented in slightly. Lin Shui and her kid cowered in the corner in terror, their faces dead pale. I, however, smiled, finally, resorting to the most primitive methods. Too bad it's also the stupidest. I walked to the door, but didn't open the peephole. Instead, I pressed an inconspicuous switch next to it. Outside, Zhang Hao raised his fist to smash it down again, but his movement jolted abruptly, as if struck by something invisible. He took a heavy blow, his whole body arching backward. He began convulsing violently, his hair standing on end. His mouth made a raspy, hissing sound. It was the high-voltage grid I installed inside the door. After a few seconds, I flipped the switch off. Zhang Hao slumped like a puddle of mud, sliding to the floor. He gave off the burnt smell of scorched flesh. I opened the door, just a crack, enough for me to see him, and him to see me. He lay on ground, like a dead fish out of water, gasping heavily for air. His eyes held nothing but emptiness and despair. Lin Shui stood behind me, looking at her former husband in this tragic state. Her lips quivered, her expression complicated. The time was right. I looked down at Zhang Hao on the floor and spoke coldly, every word like a precise scalpel, slicing open his final psychological defenses. Zhang Hao, did you want to admit that if I hadn't reinforced my door beforehand and installed that electric grid, you would have broken in just now? He shivered violently. He couldn't deny it. I kept pressing, my voice quiet, but every word piercing. Did you want to admit that once you broke in, you'd steal all my supplies and vent all your rage on Lin Shui and me, causing us irreversible harm? A whimper of a trapped beast came from Zhang Hao's throat. He looked at Lin Shui behind me, a hint of pleading finally showing in his eyes. Lin Shui instinctively stepped back, avoiding his gaze. That single step completely broke him. Looking at his completely dead eyes, I delivered the final and most merciful verdict. Zhang Hao, are you willing to give me all the remaining supplies in your house in exchange for the right to visit your son once a day? At that exact moment, Zhang Hao's pupils lost all focus. Like a mollusk with all its bones completely sucked out, he lay paralyzed on the floor without an ounce of strength to struggle. After a few seconds of dead silence, he squeezed a broken syllable from his throat, raspy like rusty iron scraping. That single word drained him of all his dignity and energy. Behind me, Lin Shui swayed imperceptibly, caught herself on the wall, and closed her eyes. Expressionless, I closed the door, shutting out that puddle of mud outside. Lin Shui, are you willing to help me inventory the supplies? I turned around and asked calmly. She snapped her eyes open, eyes filled with panic and confusion. But eventually, it morphed into a resigned numbness. She nodded. I opened the door. Zhang Hao was still lying there, like a dead dog. I didn't look at him again. I walked straight to his door opposite mine, used the keys he just handed over, and opened his door. A blast of murky air, mixed with a sour stink, and body odor hit me in the face. The living room was a mess. Half-eaten instant noodle cups and torn snack bags were thrown everywhere. The sofa was tilted to one side, covered in unknown stains. This was no longer the warm, tidy home filled with laughter I remembered. Lin Shui followed behind me, looking at the mess. Her eyes instantly turned red. I knew what she was thinking of, but I had no interest in comforting her. Drop the act. Your cheap tears can only move yourself and the trash can, I said coldly, cutting off her emotional moment. She stiffened and forced her tears back. That's right, I'm just that vicious. In the apocalypse, sympathy is the most useless thing. Lin Shui and I started moving the supplies in silence. Zhang Hao had a decent stash. Besides what I gave Lin Shui earlier, there were several boxes of cookies, a few packs of canned food, and some random snacks. The most valuable things were 2 large jugs of purified water. Just as I picked up the last box of high-energy biscuits, a black hardcover notebook fell out from the gap between the box and the wall and hit the floor with a smack. I paused. Lin Shui saw it too and subconsciously reached for it. Don't move, I ordered, alarm bells ringing in my head. Would a brute like Zhang Hao have the habit of writing a diary? What could be inside? I crouched down, not touching the book right away. My eyes, like a searchlight, carefully examined every detail of the notebook. A plain black cover, without any decoration. It didn't look like a record of personal feelings, but more like a work journal. I reached out my fingertips, touching the cold, smooth cover. Slowly, I turned to the first page. Unfamiliar handwriting, carrying a hint of madness, violently pierced my eyes. Month X, Day X, Sunny. Fuck, I'm back again. Still this hellhole. Still the day before the apocalypse. Why? Why me? My heart felt like it was grabbed by a giant, invisible hand and stopped beating instantly. Cold sweat immediately slid down my spine to my tailbone. I thought I was the only reincarnator in this world, the god who held the ultimate script. But this diary was like a resounding slap, hitting me hard in the face. Turns out I wasn't the only one. Zhang Hao, he was too. My brain raced, and countless details I'd ignored connected into a complete trail of clues at this moment. Why did he target me so accurately on the first day? Why did my hoarding behavior not surprise him at all? It was only naked greed. Why did he react so fast to my logic counterkill, even immediately thinking of inciting the neighbors? Because he was just like me, carrying memories from his past life. I forced myself to calm down and kept reading. The diary's contents were chaotic, full of curses and venting. But the information mixed and made my scalp tingle. In my past life, I died on day 7. That man used a damn rhetorical question to steal all my supplies. I was going to starve to death. No, that's not right. I didn't starve. I was killed by them. That man had no idea you can't say no. That rule isn't the deadliest part at all. The real terror comes later. They will spawn a type of monster that has a fatal reaction to the word no. If you say no to them, you will be torn apart instantly. Ha, that bastard thought he won. He didn't know the supplies he stole would only make him their first hunting target. This life, I must get ahead of him. I'll make him taste my despair from the last life. My fingers dug hard into the edge of the diary, my knuckles turning white. So Zhang Hao didn't starve to death because of me last time. After I took all his supplies, he encountered that kind of monster. Because he couldn't satisfy the monster's question and couldn't say no, he was eventually killed by it. And his first target after rebirthing was me. He didn't just want to steal my supplies. He wanted me to repeat his death from the past life. What a vicious scheme. If I hadn't been one step ahead, the person lying on the ground like a dead dog now would be me. I closed the diary and took a deep breath, the wildly beating heart in my chest gradually calming. After the immense fear came deeper relief and a trace of excitement. Zhang Hao, thanks for the gift. This intel is 10,000 times more precious than those supplies. One more reincarnator. One more type of monster. So what? This doomsday game just got more interesting. Just then, a roar full of weirdness and violence came from far outside the window. Lin Shui and her son screamed and hugged each other in fear. I walked to the window, lifting a corner of the curtain to look out. The real apocalypse was just beginning. The roaring outside sounded like a rusty saw, repeatedly cutting through the silent night. In that sound, there was a viscous, non-human malice that made the hairs on my arms stand up, even through the thick walls. Lin Shui and her son Pumpa were already pale with fright. The mother and son hugged each other tightly, sitting in the corner of the sofa. I walked to the window, carefully lifting a corner of the curtain. The street lights downstairs had gone out at some point. In the dark, a twisted figure was moving towards our building, slowly, in an extremely bizarre posture. It looked human with all four limbs, but its joints seemed bent backwards. With every step it took, its body twitched unnaturally, making a cracking sound of dislocating bones. This was what Zhang Hao's diary called them, the forbidden word beast. It stopped at the entrance of our unit. Looking up, where its face should have been, was just a smooth patch of skin. No eyes, no ears, no mouth, no nose. There was only a pitch-black vortex slowly spinning. I tightly covered my mouth, not daring to make a sound. Suddenly, the monster stopped moving. The black hole on its face pointed straight in my direction. A cold, emotionless thought appeared directly in my mind. Are you willing to share your warmth with me? My heart stopped instantly. Here it comes, the death question. Zhang Hao's diary was very clear. In his past life, he died from the forbidden word beast question. You can't say no. If you do, you'll be torn apart instantly. But saying yes won't necessarily save you either. The question was full of traps. What is warmth? Is it my body temperature or the temperature in my room? If I agreed, would it just phase through the wall and drain my life force? Zhang Hao's diary mentioned he couldn't satisfy the monster's demand, which meant there were follow-up conditions after agreeing. This was a guaranteed death trap. My brain raced. Calm down, I must calm down. The rules are rigid, but people are flexible. Since it's a question, there must be a loophole. I can't refuse, but I can misinterpret its question. I could even give it a new option. I stared at the terrifying figure downstairs. The thought in my mind turned into a sentence and projected back at it. Are you asking if I'm willing to use this cup of hot water in my hand in exchange for you disappearing from my sight instantly? I was holding a cup of hot water I'd poured to warm my hands. Its scalding temperature right now became my only lifeline. I replaced the vague concept of warmth with a specific object, hot water. At the same time, I also gave my condition. You disappear instantly. The forbidden word beast downstairs froze. The black hole on its face stopped spinning. It seemed to be processing this logic bribe it had never encountered before. Time ticked by second. Every second felt as long as a century. My back was completely soaked in cold sweat. Finally, that cold thought rang in my mind again. Yes, the moment the voice fell, the forbidden word beast body started flickering like TV static. A few seconds later, it vanished into thin air. I completely lost my strength, leaning against the cold wall, panting heavily. But before I could fully recover, a loud bang suddenly came from outside. Zhang Hao's door had been kicked open. Zhang Hao rushed out with his hair disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot, wearing a manic smile on his face. He saw me safe and sound, and saw Lin Shui and her child behind me. His smile became even more twisted. Why? Why are you still alive? He roared, like a beast driven into a corner. Just then, the forbidden word beast that had just disappeared appeared in the hallway without warning. It stood right in front of Zhang Hao. The black hole on its face aimed at Zhang Hao. The cold thought descended once again. Are you willing to share your despair with me? Everyone froze. Zhang Hao froze too. But then he immediately burst into earth-shattering laughter. Ha ha ha. Despair? Despair is all I fucking have left. If you want it, it's yours. Smiling, he opened his arms wide and walked towards the forbidden word beast. He didn't ask a counter question, didn't struggle, and didn't even hesitate in the slightest. After losing his wife and child, losing all his supplies, failing his rebirth, and being haunted by his pre-rebirth nightmare again, his mind had completely collapsed. For him, death might be the only release. The forbidden word beast seemed very satisfied with this answer. The next instant, its movements were so fast I couldn't even see clearly. I only saw a dark shadow whip up abruptly. The swishing sound was sharp and piercing. Countless black tentacles exploded from its body, like sharp blades, They instantly pierced through Zhang Hao's body. Zhang Hao's body collapsed along with them. Lin Shui screamed and passed out on the spot. I tightly covered the child's eyes. After dealing with Zhang Hao, the forbidden word beast vanished with his corpse. Only a thick, dissipating smell of blood remained in the hallway. I felt no thrill of revenge in my heart. It turns out true reckoning isn't watching your enemy die, but realizing you feel absolutely nothing when he does. Zhang Hao was dead, but this crazy world had just raised its curtain. Personal grudges were as insignificant as a speck of dust in the face of this massive survival crisis. Just then, another shrill scream came from downstairs, but this time it was human. Immediately after came a weak old man's cry for help. Help! Someone save me! That voice, it was Grandpa Wong. In my past life, when I was starving to death, it was Grandpa Wong from downstairs, who secretly slipped me half a stale steam bun through the crack under my door. I dashed to the window. I saw another forbidden word beast, cornering Grandpa Wong downstairs, by the flower bed. A cold thought began echoing in the air. At this moment, my blood boiled like never before. But in that instant, I made a decision. Lin Shui, watch the house. Don't open the door, no matter what you hear. I grabbed a bottle of high-concentration alcohol I had prepared on the table, and a windproof lighter. I yanked the door open, rushed to the stairwell, and yelled at the monster downstairs that was about to extend its tentacles towards Grandpa Wong. Hey, you faceless freak down there. Are you asking if you're willing to give up that shriveled old man in exchange for a tender, high-energy young man upstairs coming to you willingly? The air downstairs instantly froze. The forbidden word beast that was about to strike jerked to a sudden halt. Its face, with only a black hole, slowly lifted, locking onto me through the dark stairwell. The logic swap worked again. Compared to an old man drained of his life force, my freshly reborn soul was a grand feast for it. A greedy and cold thought instantly rushed into my mind. Yes, it gave up on Grandpa Wong and charged towards me at a terrifying speed. Xiaolan, run! Leave me be! Grandpa Wong's tearful roar came from downstairs. Run? A crazy smile crept onto the corners of my mouth. In this world of rules, running away is useless. A fence is the only way out. I stood at the landing between the second and third floors. It was narrow and cramped, a perfect ambush point, when the monster's figure appeared around the corner of my vision. I didn't hesitate at all. I viciously smashed the open alcohol bottle in my hand, right into the black hole on its face, and immediately pressed the windproof lighter. And next, are you asking if you're willing to accept this baptism of passion to warm your cold body? The flame traced an elegant arc in the air. The monster's logic circuit was still processing the concepts of passion and warmth. Its instinct made it unable to refuse this seemingly positive proposal. The blue flames instantly burst in a narrow stairwell. The alcohol splashed on the monster's skin, instantly turning into a bone-clinging fire. The monster let out an ear-piercing shriek. It wasn't burning to death. It was because it couldn't understand the logic conflict between this severe physical pain and the concept of warmth. This caused its core rule to glitch. It slammed into the walls frantically, its black tentacles thrashing wildly, tearing the stairwell handrails to pieces. Seizing the gap in its confusion, I delivered another blow. Are you in a lot of pain? Are you willing to stop breathing right now to make this pain disappear completely? This was a lethal trap. If it wanted to stop the pain, it had to agree to stop breathing. The monster twitched violently in the flames. The word yes in my mind hadn't even fully transmitted before its body deflated like a puncture ball, instantly going limp, turning into a puddle of black sludge sizzling in the fire. I leaned against the wall, panting heavily, my heart about to jump out of my chest. I won the bet again. Grandpa Wong crawled up from downstairs, still in shock. Looking at me with tears streaming down his face, he was about to kneel. Xiaolan, you risked your life to save this old bag of bones. I held him up, but my gaze went past him, looking at the doors upstairs and downstairs that were quietly cracking open. The commotion just now was too loud. The rats in the whole building had woken up. They saw me kill the monster, and they saw me save a life. At this moment, those eyes held not only fear, but also greed, because they knew I was capable And I had supplies. Grandpa Wong. I raised my voice, sounding as cold as the apocalyptic winter wind. Back then, no, in the past, you gave me half a steam bun. Today, I'm repaying you with a life. But now this debt is settled. I let go and pulled a boning knife from behind my waist. The blade gleamed coldly in the firelight. I walked step by step to the middle of the hallway, scanning those prying eyes. Neighbors. Enjoyed the show? The hallway was dead silent. No one dared to make a sound. I know what you're thinking. You want to steal my stuff. You want me to protect you. I sneered. Fiend it. As soon as I said this, several door cracks instantly widened. But I changed my tone, my voice chilling. In this world where you can't say no, I'm a translator of the rules. You just saw what happened to Zhang Hao. You saw what happened to those two monsters too. Those who want to live. In 10 minutes, bring all the supplies in your homes and gather at my door. I will redistribute them and tell you how to survive. Of course, I wave the knife in my hand. My eyes scarier than a monster's. You can also choose not to come. But I will ask those who don't show up one question. Are you willing to bet your whole family's lives on whether the knife in my hand is fast enough? At that moment, I was no longer the pathetic wimp bullied by Zhang Hao. I was the judge of this building. 10 minutes later, the third-floor corridor was packed with people. No one dared to bet on the answer to that question. Even the usually arrogant tattooed guy from the 5th floor was obediently holding a box of instant noodles right now, shrinking his neck and standing in the crowd. Fear is the best ruling tool. An order is often built on absolute violence. When Lin Shui opened the door and saw this scene, she covered her mouth in shock. Lin Shui, get a notebook and write this down. I didn't turn back, directly issuing orders. From today on, you are the quartermaster. All supplies go into centralized storage and will be distributed according to contribution. Grandpa Wong, you get along well with people. You're in charge of keeping an eye on them. Whoever dares to hoard, whoever dares to pull dirty tricks behind our backs, tell me immediately. Grandpa Wong straightened his back, as if regaining his youthful vigor. I shall know, Lao Zhang, don't worry. I'd like to see who dares. Someone in the crowd moved their lips, seemingly wanting to protest. I swept a glance over, and that person immediately lowered their head. I don't feed idlers, and I don't leave hidden dangers around. I looked at this ragtag group, and threw out the first iron rule for building my empire. In this camp, my questions are absolute decrees. You only need to answer with one word. Yes, Now tell me, are you willing to hand your loyalty and lives over to me to survive? In a narrow stairwell, dozens of uneven voices converged into a newborn power born from despair. Yes, from that moment on, the former survivor Lan Bai disappeared, replaced by the new king who held the power of life and death over this building. Over the next week, I led them to reinforce the stairs, seal the lower floor windows, and turn this old residential building into a fortress of steel. I taught them how to use logic to evade the monster's questions and how to use leading questions to acquire resources. The team was growing and morale was uniting. After the camp got on track, I became the de facto new king. Lin Shui was my chief steward, in charge of resource registration and distribution. Grandpa Wong became my eyes and ears, strolling around the building every day, collecting complaints and updates from every household. With more people, intentions got complicated. There are always one or two smart Alecs who think they figure out the rules and want to prove themselves to me. The one who jumped out today was a man with glasses, a mild-mannered guy named Li Kong. He was very active when he joined the camp, knew a bit about radios, and helped us fix the radio transmitter. It counted as a merit. Right now, he was standing at the supply distribution point, saying to Lin Shui, Sister Lin Shui, I want to use this intel I have to trade for some stuff from our camp. Do you think that's okay? Lin Shui followed the rules I said, answering formally, Brotherly, do you mean you're willing to use your intel in exchange for equal value supplies from our warehouse? Right? This was the first firewall I set up, emphasizing equal value. Li Kong pushed up his glasses, a glint of light flashing across the lenses. No. My question is, he spoke word by word, his voice not loud, but enough for everyone in line to hear. As the leader of the camp, are you willing to trade half the canned food in the warehouse for my promise to provide the camp with a crucial, life-saving piece of intel in the future. For this opportunity, the surroundings instantly went quiet. Everyone's eyes shifted from the cans to my face. Half the cans. That's almost half of our camps. Hard currency. Trading our very foundation for survival. For his empty promise? What a total scam. He's not asking Lin Shui. He's asking me. He exploited the rule perfectly. Cannot say no. If I say no, how will the rule punish me? No one knows, and no one dares to try. If I agree, my authority will collapse instantly. If he could trade a promise for half our cans today, tomorrow someone will trade a ghost story. For all our water, order will be completely gone. I crossed my arms and slowly walked out from behind the crowd. I walked up to him and smiled. Li Gang, that's a very good question. The corners of his mouth twitched into an uncontrollable smirk. But I didn't quite catch that. Are you trying to help me translate your question a little more accurately, so everyone can understand what you mean? I stared right into his eyes. Without waiting for his answer, I fired back my question at lightning speed. You mean you want to ask me? Are you willing to take the lead? To give away half the rations we all rely on to survive? For free? To bet on a verbal promise from Li Kong that holds zero weight? In the future? Is that what you mean? My voice suddenly rose. Every word was like a bullet, shooting at everyone present. The smugness on Li Kang's face instantly froze. He didn't expect me to ignore his bait entirely, but instead to directly and nakedly rip open his filthy little scheme and display it bloody for everyone to see. The crowd began to stir. The way they looked at Li Kang went from just watching a show to scrutiny and suspicion. He started sweating on his forehead. His lips quivered, but he couldn't say a single word because he couldn't say no. Once he did, it would be admitting that his previous question meant exactly what I translated. I took a step forward, getting almost right in his face, and lowered my voice. I spoke at a volume only the two of you could hear. Stop your cheap little tricks. You're only moving yourself and the trash can. Then I took a sharp step back and faced the crowd again. Or maybe Li Kang. You actually want to ask everyone another question? My gaze swept across everyone. Do you want to ask everyone here? Are you willing to trust someone who, in the apocalypse, doesn't want to contribute any value, but only wants to use rule loopholes to drain the group's resources, playing everyone for fools? The crowd completely exploded. Fuck. So that's what he meant. Damn it, I knew it sounded too good to be true. Try to trade a promise for half the cans. He's trying to make us all work for him for free. Li Kang's face instantly turned pale. He couldn't deny any of my questions, because the iron chain of the rules had tightly locked his throat. Every moment of his silence was a tacit admission. I looked at him like a rat trapped in a cage. Now it was time for a public execution. I raised my hand to quiet the crowd. Li Kang, I'll give you one last chance to ask a question. I stared dead into his dodging eyes and spoke clearly, word by word. Do you want to ask everyone one last question? Everyone, Li Kang, just lost my mind for a moment and tried to use a logic trap to harm the collective interest. For my own selfish gain, I am willing to accept punishment. Are you willing to kick me out of this camp? Once that was asked, the whole hallway fell dead silent. Li Kang was shaking all over. The look he gave me was full of fear and begging. Everyone looked at him, waiting for him to ask the question, or rather, waiting for me to ask it for him. If he wouldn't say it, I'd say it for him. I turned to the crowd and raised my voice. Is everyone willing to let a guy who tried to divide us and destroy our foundation of trust stay here so he can have a second or third chance to push us into the abyss? Yes, kick him out. We're willing. This time, the answer was uniform and deafening. Under the rule of cannot say no, this became our camp's first public vote. Li Kang slumped to the ground, looking like death. I looked down at him from above, feeling no pity. You heard them. I turned around and didn't look at him again. Lin Shui, give him a bottle of water and a pack of biscuits, then ask him to leave. Absolute authority was officially established in this moment. Just then, the radio in the corner that Li Kang fixed suddenly let out a piercing static noise. A strange man's voice with a huge echo came out of it. Survivors of the whole city. Hello. Are you willing to give up your pointless resistance and join our human destiny community? The voice sounded like it came from an abyss, drilling through the low-quality radio waves and into everyone's ears. Hand over all your supplies. abandon your ridiculous private territories, and accept the most efficient unified management. Are you willing? The man on the radio wasn't yelling, wasn't threatening. His tone was as calm as if he were reading the weather report. But it was exactly this calmness that made a chill rise from the soles of our feet, straight to the top of our heads. This was an open scheme, a massive trap laid out in the sun that you just couldn't refuse. The survivors behind me, whose faces had just shown a hint of relief from kicking out Li Kong, instantly froze. Fear flooded the hallway like an invisible tide. Grandpa Wang's lips trembled as he looked at me, his eyes full of terror. Lin Shui instinctively pulled her child behind her, her face pale. Everyone's eyes were like searchlights, focused on me. In their eyes, I was the god who could fight the rules. But only I knew I wasn't a god. I was just an ordinary guy who had one more death experience than the others. This man on the radio was totally different from Zhang Hao and Li Kong, those jokes who only knew how to use rules to take things. He was on another level. He didn't just understand the rules. He found a way to maximize their effect. Public broadcasting. He didn't need to knock on doors one by one. He just needed to sit in one spot and ask the whole city, and he could force his will on anyone who could hear the broadcast. My rebirth advantage was quickly wiped out in this moment. When everyone has the nuclear launch codes, the bullet I made in advance is no longer the only trump card. Pressure like a physical boulder, pressed hard against my heart. Are we just going to sit here and wait for him to use one undeniable question after another that we can't refuse to drain us completely dry of the pathetic little stash we have and finally make us walk out voluntarily to become his slaves? Or my gaze swept across their scared faces and the innocent eyes of the child in Lin Shui's arms. No, I didn't claw my way back from hell just to change locations and die again another way. I took a deep breath. The frustration and pressure boiling in my chest were forcefully pushed down. I looked at them and spoke slowly. I am a mountain, not a stream. Everyone was stunned. They didn't get what I meant. I smiled. There wasn't a hint of warmth in that smile, only icy sharpness. A small stream will be swallowed by a bigger river, but a mountain just stands there. I walked over to the buzzing radio, reached out, and to everyone's shock, slowly snapped the antenna. With a crisp snap, the annoying broadcast stopped abruptly. The whole world instantly went quiet. I turned to the dumbfounded crowd. He asked us if we're willing, but he forgot we also have the right to ask. Staying here means handing over our right to ask questions. We'd just be meat on the chopping block, waiting for him to decide where to make the next cut. Are you okay with that? No one spoke, but their clenched fists and red eyes already gave me the answer. I walked over to the wall, where hung a city map we brought back while scavenging. My finger lightly tapped the exact center of the map, the spot marked as the radio and TV tower. Rather than waiting for him to find us, we might as well go find him first. Lin Shui, I ordered, and she immediately stood up straight. Inventory all our weapons and usable vehicles. Pick 3 of the strongest, sharpest guys. We're forming an assault team. Grandpa Huang, hey, you and the rest of the people, start heavily reinforcing this building immediately. From now on, this is our fortress and our fallback. I paused, my gaze sweeping over everyone. Remember, we aren't going to surrender, and we aren't going to negotiate. My voice turned cold, filled with unquestionable resolve. I'm going to tell him that this city has 2 kings. Or rather, pretty soon there will only be one. We drove a modified SUV. The front was fitted with steel plates, like a silent beast, roaming through the dead city. No one spoke in the car. There was only the low roar of the engine and the crunching of tires over gravel. The 3 guys Lin Shui picked. One was Liu Mo, an ex-soldier, in charge of driving and keeping watch. The other 2 were twin brothers, Demao and Air Mao. They used to be gym trainers, big and tall, gripping fire axes tightly in their hands. Soon we arrived in front of our destination. Their camp was even more heavily guarded than I thought. Liu Mo parked the car about 50 meters away from the first guard. Bro, what do we do? They have guns. Liu Mo's voice was a bit dry. I pushed the door open and stepped out alone. I saw at least 5 or 6 dark muzzles, aimed right at me from behind the guard. The lead guy shouted at me from a distance. Are you willing to turn around and leave right now? A very smart opening. I couldn't answer yes, nor could I say no, because if I said no, according to the rules, literally it would mean I wasn't willing to leave, which was basically giving myself up. But I smiled. I planted my feet and asked loudly, I'm here to see your boss. Tell me, are you trying to ask me? Are you willing to drop all your defenses, walk into our base alone, and submit to our interrogation? I took a potentially hostile action and turned it directly into a question they initiated. The guy shouting was clearly stunned. He didn't expect me to throw it back like that. The air seemed to freeze for a few seconds. Finally, a voice came from the walkie-talkie behind him, laced with a bit of amusement. Interesting. Let him in. The wire mesh gate slowly pulled open. I looked back engagedly. Mo and the guy's a reassuring look, then walked in alone, step by step. Soon I was brought to the inside of the radio and TV tower. It had been converted into a massive living area. People were walking around, but it was eerily quiet. Everyone was expressionless, like robots following a program. This kind of order gave me chills to the bone. Finally, in the broadcasting hall on the top floor, I met their leader. He looked to be in his 40s, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and a clean white shirt, rather than a doomsday warlord. He looked more like a college professor. He was sitting behind a large anchor desk, wiping his glasses methodically. Welcome, logic-breaking guest. He looked up, his eyes sharp as a hawk behind the lenses. I assume you're the professor who likes asking questions. I unceremoniously pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. He chuckled, seemingly unbothered by my rudeness. In the apocalypse, knowledge is power, isn't it? He put his glasses back on, leaned forward slightly, and folded his hands on the desk. Your appearance pleasantly surprised me. I thought I was the only wide-awake person in this city. Since you knew I existed, was it using that stupid broadcast to test me? A bit redundant, I retorted bluntly again. No, that wasn't a test. He shook his head, his smile widening. That was a declaration. I was simply declaring my presence and clearing out the trash that couldn't even understand the rules. His words revealed an undisguised arrogance and a disregard for life. My mind started racing. This guy was 10,000 times harder to deal with than Zhang Hao. Zhang Hao's greed and malice were written all over his face, but the evil of the man in front of me was hidden beneath layers of logic and high IQ. He didn't enjoy the plunder itself. He enjoyed the thrill of crushing people with his intellect and controlling everything. He looked at me and suddenly threw out the first real question. Since you came here on your own accord, you must be a smart man too. So, are you willing, for the future of all survivors, to contribute your wisdom and join us? This question was 100 times more vicious than the guards downstairs. It was a seemingly bright trap. If I couldn't answer, it would mean tacitly accepting his leadership. My brain rapidly analyzed every single word he said. Contribute, join us. These words all implied an unequal, superior-subordinate relationship. He didn't want an ally. He wanted a smart subordinate. I met his gaze and laughed. Professor, your question is very interesting. But before I answer, can I take it that you want to ask me, are you willing to cooperate equally with my team, to jointly develop a plan that guarantees everyone's basic rights? Instead of me unilaterally submitting to you personally, I swapped contribute with cooperate equally and join us with jointly develop. The smile on the professor's face stiffened for the first time. He stared at me in silence for a solid 10 seconds. The amusement in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by the caution of facing a worthy opponent. You're sharper than I thought. He suddenly changed the subject. Aren't you curious how I was able to so easily build this kind of order? Without waiting for my reply, he revealed the answer himself. Because the rules themselves can be upgraded when someone uses the rules to successfully control the will of over 100 people. They get one chance to make a wish upon the rules. My heart sank. The information advantage of being reborn vanished completely in that moment. This was a secret I had never heard of. My first wish was that anyone who even thinks the word no toward me will feel a sharp, needle-like pain. You see, order was established just like that. A fanatical light flashed in the professor's eyes. A wave of cold hit my brain instantly. No wonder the people here acted like zombies. It wasn't that they didn't want to resist. They didn't even dare to think about it. Now, he leaned back in a chair again, resuming his posture of total control. Do you still think you're qualified to talk about equality with me? He thought this secret was enough to break me. But in his words, I found his most fatal blind spot. I looked at him, looking all smug. over his genius design and suddenly found it quite funny. I said coldly, "Stop acting. Your cheap self-admiration only pleases yourself and the trash can." The professor's face completely changed. I stood up, didn't look at him anymore, but instead looked around the hall, at his subordinates, who were starting to murmur because of what I said. My gaze was like a scalpel, slicing through the fake tranquility here. I raised my hand and pointed at the high and mighty professor, my movements slow and deliberate, like passing a public sentence. My voice wasn't loud, but it struck everyone's heart like thunder. "Professor, do you want to ask your followers here? Are you willing, for my personal ambition, to attack other innocent survivors and turn into inhuman creatures, just like those monsters?" My question was like a bomb dropped into stagnant water, making the whole hall buzz. Everyone's eyes were fixed dead on the professor. Their eyes were no longer numb and hollow like before, but a mix of panic, hesitation, and even a trace of long-suppressed anger. The air seemed to freeze, with only quiet whispers spreading through the crowd. "Turn into monsters. Attack innocent survivors." These phrases precisely pierced the very last bit of their human bottom line. The professor's face went from pale to chalk white. He suddenly shot up from his chair. His proud needle-pain rule seemed to have failed at this moment, because my question didn't require a yes or no answer from them. I was just repeating a truth they all knew deep down, but didn't dare think about too closely. I asked that buried question that tortured their souls. He lost the moment I asked that question. He had already lost. "Nonsense," the professor finally snapped, his voice shrill and cracking. He raised his hand, a trembling finger pointing at me. "Stop spouting your lies. Are you trying to ask everyone? Are you willing to trust an outsider and destroy the peace we worked so hard to build?" This was his final counterattack, trying to use words like outsider and peace to turn everyone against me once again. Unfortunately, it was too late. I completely ignored his question, but instead faced everyone's gaze, and calmly, word by word, said, "I am a mountain, not a stream. My existence is not to merge into someone else's territory, but to give other struggling streams a direction to converge into a mighty ocean." I paused, scanning those wavering faces. "Now, I'll give you a question you don't need to answer. Are you willing to join me and build an order truly meant for survival? Not for someone's personal ambition, an order that can fight off the beasts and let us sleep soundly without worrying that tomorrow will become executioners." As my voice dropped in the crowd, an unstoppable commotion erupted. The professor's cronies, the armed guards standing beside him, also started looking at each other, their grips on their weapons instinctively loosening. The scales had completely tipped. The professor watched the scene of his betrayal, the color draining from his face, as if completely drained of all strength. He slumped defeatedly back into his chair. He had lost completely and utterly. I didn't give him another look, but turned and went downstairs and told them to bring Lin Shui and Grandpa Wang over. After Lin Shui and Grandpa Wang arrived, we started organizing people to take over the supplies and personnel here. Everything was orderly, as if we were the true masters here. The takeover went smoother than I imagined. I slowly walked to the floor-to-ceiling window in the lobby, looking down at the plaza below, where the people I brought and the professors' original forces started to carefully interact and merge. A new, more massive survivor camp was taking shape under my feet. From today onwards, I am no longer an individual struggling to survive. I have become a leader. But before I even had time to crack a smile, a cold, familiar mechanical voice blasted in my mind without warning. Beginner protection period ended. Rules updating.